Hi, welcome to the Every Thought Matters podcast. My name is Kelly Braber, the host, and today I have this amazing human being by the name of Jennifer Hargis. Welcome to the Every Thought Matters podcast.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy that you're here because I've wanted to relaunch my podcast and I wanted a marquee guest. And I don't put people on pedestals because it gives them farther to fall, but I do believe that you're a wonderful creator that inspires a lot of us. So let's
Thank
kind
you.
of dive into who you are. Yeah, really, who are you?
Who am I?
Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm an accidental creator. I am probably like a lot of people during the pandemic. I was working from home and craving connectivity and a creative outlet. Honestly, for the first time in my life, I felt like I needed an avenue. And I've never really felt that before. And so I had been consuming during the pandemic content and watching others do. And I started doing here and there. And then it was September of 2020. I had an encounter with a psychic. I had never been to a psychic medium before, and I had actually gone along with my best friend who had just lost her daughter a few years prior. And so I said, let's go and we'll, share the session. And I came home from that session and I really, to this day can't really explain exactly what it was that had transpired. I didn't feel like it had been, a cataclysmic event. I didn't think that she had given me any huge insight, but there was just enough in her message that I came home. By the time I went to bed that night, I was in a full blown panic attack, and by morning, I had spiritually awakened, to say the least. And so I had one of those ta-da awakening moments in my life. God, what are we at? 2024, 3, 4 years ago now. And it changed me completely. And then from that moment on, it was a matter of finding a way out of my corporate life, finding a way out of the life that I had been living as the former Jen for so long. And it took me a few years, but I'm out of corporate life now. I'm headfirst into my spiritual life and content creation, which is just as much of a surprise to me as it is to my family and everybody else in my life. I came from a world of Medicare and healthcare, and I used to run call centers. That was what my world, and that's what I knew. And it's been fun. It's been such a fun ride on TikTok, and it's just given me so many more opportunities to meet people like you and to talk with so many people that are also shifting like I did, during this odd season of life.
that's an amazing, wow. I didn't know about the psychic story. I have a really good friend of mine who is a medium on TikTok, so he's reintroduced me to some of my deceased family. So that's been
Really
wonderful. Yeah, and like it's funny because him, along with a couple of others, introduced me to my grandmother. And my
interesting.
grandmother, Grandma Gertie, passed away 2 years before I was even born. And yet she still comes and visits once in a while. Like it's
Interesting.
so wired, just weird for me to that this human that I never knew. But my favorite story, and you'll like this about her, was that back in the Second World War, she was a medium for families to see whether or not they would go to her, and she would channel to tell them whether or not their sons were going to come home from the war.
Wow.
That's my grandmother, who I never knew. She, like I said,
Did you know that about her though before? Did you know the stories about what she did before you were introduced to her?
I knew. Yeah, I knew about the medium thing because we, because of the pandemic, we did a Zoom call for Christmas Eve, and I set it all up, and my mom dropped that interesting nugget. It wasn't her mom; it was my father's mother,
Hmm.
and my father, who my mother divorced father. So she spoke glowingly about her when with that, and it's funny because she told my oldest sister about that story as well, that her coming and visiting me, and she's like, "Yeah, Grandma Gertie visits her as well."
Isn't that funny?
It's
They tend to
strange.
make the rounds.
They tend to make the rounds, and it's fascinating to me because what I loved about you in this type of reality is, for lack of a better word, it's a different matrix for us. And I'm still learning how to do it because there's days where I get caught up in the whatever the 3D world, and I just like, oh, why did you go there? But then I
I'm
also,
having a week like that. This is my week.
wow, yeah, I'm having that too, and it just like somebody told me like vehemently disagreed with me with the fact that people make you feel things. Like, how is that even physically possible? How is that neurologically possible? Nobody can make you feel anything. That's what I so, and it's like, oh, okay, now I'm back down in the rabbit hole of being 3D and just like, come on, science will tell you that. Like, I, like you've always said, one of my favorite things you did was the Ram Dass book. Like, I
Hmm.
still don't know how I got that book.
Isn't that funny? It is so true that it just appears for people. I have no idea how I first found even him, to be honest with you, but I think it was because, and I think this is probably why most of us forget, because we're only seeking that type of information when it's time. Nobody goes out looking for the meaning of their own existence or their meaning and purpose to life if they haven't experienced some sort of shift within themselves. And so I think we, in my case, and probably for a lot of others, is that we're just looking for somebody that hears what we're hearing or sees what we're seeing, somebody that can relate, because it's just so different than anything we've ever felt or thought, or experienced. And so that book will find you because it does contain all of that. It contains all of those feelings and validation to those feelings that you're feeling. So I think we find it in a moment of confusion and anxiety, and it's such a calming peace, that's offered to us by the universe, that we just forget how we were introduced. It just becomes a part of us.
Yeah, it does. And I have a little book, and for those listening, it's called The Teachings of the Buddha. And it's just a
Mm.
tiny little book. And a week ago, I opened it up, and I've stayed on this same page about the uh, four establishments of mindfulness. And I keep reading it over and over and over. And it's basically one of my favorite things about the teachings of Buddha is you want to watch your life like it's a movie.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm Kelly, and I'm moving my hands right now. Kelly's talking to Jennifer. Jennifer and Kelly are on the podcast, so somebody's up here watching it. When you start looking at your world like that, those four teachings of mindfulness are about the physical, the mind, the feeling, and the spiritual. So you start watching all of that. That I am aware that I'm moving my arm. I am aware that I'm blinking my eye. And I've not stopped reading that every day for like the last week because it just obliterates your whole way you walk through the world. And I don't know where you're at in your spiritual journey, but have you looked at stuff like Buddhism and
Mm-hmm.
seeing what you could learn from that? Because what I've done is I've cherry picked everything that works for me. And it's a little bit of Buddhism, it's a little bit of practical, it's a little bit of magic. I got a book called Positive Magic, and it's a little bit of all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think religion or ritual, for anybody, can be whatever brings up that feeling within inside you, of connection with your higher self, with source. And I think that's why so many modalities, so many religions exist in the world, and why they're all successful, and why they really all have the same undertone. And it is simply about connection with that place inside of us that we're afraid to touch, that we all know is there. It beats in our eardrums every second of our life, but we don't want to hear it. And yeah, I think that I have never been one that has been overtly religious, even when I was going to church, and I was brought up in the Catholic Church. And I'm, in ways, I guess I'm glad that I was sort of rooted in that. So I have an education, at least a foundation or an understanding of what that's about, but I don't really get tied to anything in particular. Nothing that I've studied or looked at has ever once caused me to say or gravitate, I guess I should say, in one direction. But I do have things that I like to do. Honestly, for me, the best meditation for me is in the shower. I find water is absolute magic for me, for my intuition, for my mental health. And so my most successful, I guess, rituals are meditating in the shower.
Yeah, the shower for me, water in itself, and I'm sure you've gone down that rabbit hole, how like literally water can change properties based on your own
Mm,
emotions, right?
yeah,
But being there, I know people who sing and dance in the shower and like, yeah, no, I usually get my best ideas in the shower.
me
I really
too.
do. I get these, but water has that negative ion thing. You have to go down to the little rabbit hole about all of that, but it has that property that kind of
I know what you mean. Yeah,
stimulates. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I do, and I feel like it is. It sort of it washes away the blockage and the energy, the negativity that's swirling around me, and it just clears my path. And I do, just like you said, I get the best ideas in the if I need to like clear a block, I take a shower.
Back in
Truly.
the day, I used to have a what scuba divers use is the wet whiteboard because if you're a scuba diver and you're like researching something, you can have a whiteboard underwater, right? And it doesn't
Hmm,
smear. Kind of like that, have it in a shower so you can actually you get that idea, you can scribble it down.
that's a genius idea I've never thought of.
It's I used to have it. I got it that idea from a female comic that I knew in LA. That's what she did. She would write her
That's
ideas
really smart.
because that's where I get my most brilliant ideas and my own. Also, like you were just being really dumb thinking about that because I was down in a no more than 30 minutes before this podcast down there in the 3D world. Like, why can't people see what I see?
Hmm.
I have that's the hardest thing about this, and you throw in that I have something called an avoidant attachment style, and it's like you kind of want to stand out, but you don't. But which is kind of odd because I'm trying to create a spiritual community of like-minded people like me, so I can lead them because I love to lead. That's in my DNA. It's always been in my DNA. I don't know. There's a leadership vacuum. I step in every time.
I can tell that about you. You definitely have that command. You have the ability to lead.
Oh, I do. And I know my that's one of my strengths, but also one of my weaknesses is in the details personally.
Mm, hmm.
So that's why I lead to get. You know, I had a IT director because I was a computer programmer for 25 years, so I've done the
Mm.
corporate world. Yeah, I used to do something called for about 15 years. I worked on this ERP system called PeopleSoft, and
I know it well. So my last corporate role was as an IT recruiter. I used to recruit people just like you.
yeah, and that's what I did. I did PeopleSoft HR, and I was never the smartest person in the room, but my IT director at the time told me, said he looks at me, and you know, 2 steps away from the CEO of the company. He's like, Kelly, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I am surrounded by the smartest people, and that's
Mm,
my ultimate goal is to surround myself with all these smart,
right.
spiritual people. So literally, my mantra is change the world one person, one thought at a time, and
Yeah.
that's my goal.
I think that I've started to recognize even just this year, in my journey of following the spiritual path. is the need for community. It's so vital to our mental health, especially people that are awakening because because
Literally
we
because
need one another. We need one another, and it's healthy to talk about with people that understand.
it is helpful because I I honestly think, and I've had, the ideas like, Nash, like, everybody just like a million people going to Washington D.C. right in front of the Washington Monument and meditating for an hour.
Mm,
You know, imagine what that would do to change the course of events. Just a million people in one spot doing the same activity, being guided by the same person, or something. I've always thought about like, but that's why we need community. We need that connection with
mhm.
people. And
Well,
I,
then you're doing that, in your own way here with this platform and sharing your message and enlightening others all around the world. That is the beauty to having this platform, is that we are in essence doing that all together.
yeah, and you don't need it to be physical, but it's also nice because then you can get that dopamine rush a little bit. But
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
also just knowing that you're making a little bit of a difference, and that's what I wanted to relaunch this podcast because it was vital for me to use this as a platform to create that community.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I love it. And it's, podcasting is a world that I haven't gone into myself, but I love it. I think that it's, there's room for all of us and there's an audience for all of us. And I love that you do it.
I do too, and I haven't done it for like over a year because just 2024 has been a challenge for me. So just mentally, so and I know relaunching this was what I needed to do. I just kept resisting it. I resisted it for so long, and I'm like, okay.
I'm so glad you did it. I'm so glad you did it.
Oh, I am too. I know because I will. There's I've had three different careers. I've been a computer programmer, did that for 25 years. I worked in the film industry for about 10, and now I'm trying to do coaching with a survival job on the side.
Mm,
And the biggest endorphin rush I've ever had was truly fixing a piece of code that nobody else could fix. Being on set for a movie, there's just nothing like that energy of being on a movie set. I can't. Never been in the industry. You just don't know what it's like to be around 35 to 40 people that all have the same goal in mind.
mm.
So, and it's so satisfying. It's one of the most satisfying feelings in the entire world. And I've been a producer and I've been in front of the camera, but I'm better at obviously being behind the camera because I did project management in IT. So that translates very well to the producing side. But that and then this podcast, that's those three things that are really, I get it. I'll have a huge endorphin rush after this.
Oh,
I
I
really
love it.
will.
I love it. That's
And
your passion then. That's awesome.
yeah, because I'm looking for what my purpose is. But what do you have since you have left the corporate world? Because IT recruiting is not for the weak,
No.
because that's one thing to look like. There's a guy that comes into the restaurant I work at, and his niche is bankers recruiting for
Mm,
senior level management people. And my ophthalmologist in LA, had, she catered to a group of ophthalmologists trying to find the right spot for them. Like she created an online community for all these doctors to come together, which is just mind blowing to me.
brilliant.
And she created community, but the recruiting side, IT is so hard because as somebody on the other side of it, most of the recruiters I talk to wouldn't know SQR from SQL,
Hmm.
or so you got to get. And I don't know what it's like today. I did actually. One of my friends said, come work for us, blah blah blah. I'm like, all right, I don't think anything will happen because I haven't done it for 10 years. Nobody's going to touch somebody my age 10 years later, but whatever. Figured why not?
Yeah.
But I love this passion that I have, and this is why I wanted to relaunch it. And I will relaunch and rebrand this to make sure that people are aware. But one of my most favorite things about you is the way you create content.
Mm,
One of your, for me personally, one of your gifts is the you speak so well. You
mm.
enunciate very well. Is that always been your thing?
Well, I think yes, it has. My mother is a very, I guess, polished, articulate speaker, so I picked up what she was putting down all my life. But I used to be in a call center environment for 20 years. First, I started on the phones, and then you know, started leading the call center. But you do have to have I guess, a voice, you know. So I appreciate that compliment. Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess I have always had it, and it's probably just been enhanced because I've been talking to people and on the phones and for so long, interviewing.
So, yeah, and the reason why I appreciate that is one of the biggest reason is that I was born partially deaf. So
Oh,
anybody who enunciates well, I tend to gravitate to. But I love the way it's so brilliant the way you put your content together. I don't know if it's scripted or not. It doesn't look scripted to me. It just looks like
not usually. Yeah,
it's
no.
it just usually, yeah, they need to hear this. I've got this message. They need to hear it. And then you put it together, and the way you talk, the enunciation, just, it's honest to goodness soothing for somebody
Oh,
like me. It's
thank you so
like,
much.
if you ever did a meditation, a guided meditation, you'd be really good at that.
People have told me that. It's funny when it comes to your own voice. I don't like the sound of my own voice, but I have thought about that actually. I need to start doing our lives. I really need to start doing more, things like this where we can interact. And I've thought about doing some reading books. I think people have requested that through the years. But yeah, the meditation, that does sound interesting
You
for
would be
sure.
really good at that.
Yeah, I'll
All
have
you
to
have
look
to do
into
is
that.
set up a bit of a soundproof studio and just do it. And
Yeah, I'm looking
what
at your setup. I need to get my own setup too. That's something I'm lacking. I need to get the microphone and, have like a stationary spot in my home, starting to get I should
well,
start treating it like my job and create like a little office for myself.
that's why I wore what I wore, because that's also I puts me into that vibe that this is my job,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's something I love to do because I love talking to people. I've had so many different types of people, from a screenwriter to a director to uh, a lady out of Dallas who runs her own life coaching center.
Mm.
She's got a PhD in family counseling. Still, I text her to this day, hey, how are you? What's going on? And she's just the sweetest thing. And I've had everything in between. So this is fun for me. And I also looked at it, go, wow, well, you're paying, 15 bucks a month to host your podcast. You might as well use it. And I wanted to relaunch and get something going because I know this is vital for, speaking of mental health, this is vital for my mental health.
Hmm. And what you're providing to others too, even just by sharing that, it gives somebody the feeling they know they're not feeling that way by themselves. So it's so important. I'm so glad you're doing it.
I am glad that I'm back in the saddle because I've got somebody lined up again, possibly next week, who's
Beautiful.
recovering from a spinal cord injury, learning how to walk. And I find these people, and I love a story of why are you here? What is really tracking for you that and this woman that I'm talking about, she literally is one of the happiest people you'd ever see. She's
Mm,
wandering around on lives in a freaking wheelchair. She's
amazing.
happy,
Yeah. And that's the kind of energy that we want to catch,
right?
And
We
that's
all
I
want to
love
catch it.
that lining up. Yeah, we all want to catch that kind of magical energy. Absolutely. I love that. I love that tone for your show. Do you do a weekly? Will it be a weekly?
I used to do it weekly, and that's what I got to get back to is get once a week and get going and push it forward because I just think it's vital to my success. And been meaning to get back to this question. So you and I have been in the corporate world, especially
Mm.
IT recruiting, IT and all of that, and you've left it. What's the hardest part about leaving it?
The hardest part about leaving it is as much as I thought that I hated it, it was so much a part of my identity. So I felt like um, the reasons that I left were so that I could pursue my passions and um, for the first time, really chase something that I feel like I was made for. But so much of who I am is tied to that old person and those jobs and the tasks and responsibilities that I held every day. And it's still 6 months later, and I'm still a fish out of water every single day. The 8 to 5 schedule, um, I don't have to be on it, but yet that's just what I continuously do. And it's been definitely weird. I equate it to I had gastric bypass surgery. So I've had my body size has been at both ends of the spectrum. And even to this day, almost a decade after losing all of the weight, I still don't feel at home in my body. And so I feel like it's going to take me a while to sort of shift out of that world, that corporate, and there's so much more to it than that. It's the headspace where you are doing, toiling your energy for others. And
Ooh,
it's just different. It's different. And it's been really layered and hard to kind of wrap my head around, but I'm getting there. And schedule has been vital. And keeping a schedule for yourself is really critical.
I find that to be the hardest thing. Even with
Yeah.
my day job, we're 40 hours a week and then I get Monday and Tuesday off. But I still think one of the hardest things I did, because in 2014, I got a severance package. They let me go because I made too much money.
Mm,
And I was sitting with a fat bank account, did not know how to even process this. And I think one of the hardest things was learning about that schedule. For
yeah.
me, the schedule and having some sort of safety. Because right now, you know, that feeling secure that you have a job that money's going to come in. And being spiritual, that's one of the first things you have to learn about being spiritual is losing control.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part, I think, was trusting the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, that it'll be fine. And that takes time. It takes one of the hardest parts for me because money has not been an easy thing for me to master.
Mm,
But in order to truly, one of my biggest coaching mantras for myself is if you want to manifest more abundance into your life, you have to manage the abundance you have.
yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to show the universe that you, like, I have $115 in my bank account, but I know exactly how much I have, and I have to show the universe that I can manage that because it's not
Hmm.
going to give you more when you
Hmm.
can't manage it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's not an easy thing. And that's really the magic to any manifestation is to, yeah, basically you just simplified it. Excellent. Take care of what it is that you have first before you damn
yeah,
expect to get anything else. Yeah. And
right.
it's not a punishment. It's simply the equation.
Yeah, but once you start figuring out I how to manage that and just not about it's not about control, it's about peace of mind.
Hmm.
And to be honest with you, I've had a lot more money in my bank account, but now I have more peace of mind with what little I have because I know I'm fine. Got a
Hmm.
roof over my head, my dogs are fine, all of that. So I
No, I
find
get
that's
that.
yeah, you know, one of my merchandise things is cherish what you have and you'll have more to cherish. And I don't know where I saw that somewhere on social media, so I just put it on my merchandise. Like that's perfect.
I do love that. And it's so true. It's how you turn it all around. But it unfortunately, that's one of, if not the hardest thing to turn around, to control, to let go of, I should say, not control. To let go of is the thinking, is the mind.
Yeah, I equate it to when you get out to your car and you're going to work. You just okay. I just ask. I go, hey Spirit, all right, what's it gonna be? The car starts up. Okay, that's it just every moment's got to be like that,
Hmm.
where you're like, and I'm getting there, and that's why I know I can tell my endorphins are just starting to finally kick in. Half an hour into this,
Hmm.
this is this is what I love.
Hmm.
And one of my friends, a former coach, he said, Kelly, it's okay that you can make money off of what you love to do because I love it. And I had a person who a couple weeks ago wanted a consult with me as a coach, and it fell through, but it awakened the fact that I loved it because I started getting prepared. And I started doing all the work. I was like, this is so cool. And then I realized it didn't come to fruition, but what I got out of it was this. I was able to, in the middle of it, of the no, I can't do that right now. In the middle of it, I'm like, what's the lesson? And the lesson was, okay, you need to be better prepared to where if somebody says, I want, you to be my coach, you've got everything ready that you could actually coach instead of, you know what, like doing paperwork, getting, like, it's kind of like filling out an application, for a job. There's so much
Hmm.
you have to do. You got an
Yeah.
I-9 and all of that stuff. As a coach, you got to have all that stuff ready. And it taught me that you're not as prepared as you thought you were. And again, that goes back to the same thing is you go back to it, go, you can show the universe that you can do that without there being any clients. The clients will show up.
Hmm.
And that's how it works.
It goes back to that, what is it, field of dreams, which I love. But if you build it, they will come. And that really, what that means is, when you're in the flow, you have to build it first. When you're in that space is when you're going to start to attract. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah,
And so you're doing that. So you set your podcast back up, and now you're in that headspace to do coaching, and
right.
and now you'll get more.
And one of my, I have a small network of readers that I trust, and one of them's like, you need to get back to being a creative person. Like, okay. So I've created this stuff, and then I went into Chat GPT, which I know whatever everybody thinks of AI, it can be good, it can be bad, but for me it was great because I asked it to create 5 clients for me. It created 5 clients for me to work through some of those holes in my approach. It's just like, wow, this is so great that I can actually do that now.
Yeah,
Where
Chat GPT is awesome.
it's amazing, and I'm sure our old world, like now they're inundated with resumes with perfect these flowery words for what they did, But I loved it for this because I took on one of the clients and worked through something and gave and with Chat GPT, but I still felt like I made a difference.
Yeah,
I did
sure.
that for free, and there's nothing. I didn't get paid nothing. Nobody did anything, but it reawakened my purpose.
I love that. I
But
love
for
it.
you, was that seminal moment? Was that medium that you went to that you knew
Mm.
that this was your purpose, or getting
No,
really big on TikTok with or what?
yeah, no, I think that the shift that occurred within me following my psychic was more, the veil had lifted, and I felt everything. I didn't know what it meant. And a lot of my life suddenly made sense in a moment like that.
Well,
And I really could start to see the way that I'm able to view the world, others, situations, conversations. is that I see everything through. Um, it's very hard to explain, but now I see everything. I guess it's empathy. I'm empathetic or I'm empathic, so I can feel everything that's coming off of you. I can feel everything so it took me a lot of years to figure out how to discern my own emotion from what I was feeling off of other people. And that was a frightening experience too, because it wasn't like all of a sudden I had this ability. I recognized that I had always had it. And then it was, the shadow work ensued. I had to go through and pick apart
Mm.
all of my traumas and, figure out what was mine and what didn't actually belong to me and sort through all of that. And yeah, it's never going to end. I'm still sorting through it. But yes, I guess long answer to your short question. But I guess when I started talking on social media and people started responding like, hey, me too, then I was like, oh my God, it's not just me losing my mind over here. Like something is really real happening to me. And yeah, it just started taking off from there. And you're right, I don't really script anything, and I just kind of speak what I'm feeling in the moment. And I think that's why it's so authentic and why it resonates with so many, and for ways that I can't really explain, I guess. But it's amazing.
I okay. Two things. One, we're all Ram Dass, right? The book.
Mm,
I got introduced to Ram Dass with my former coaches, who told me a long time ago that we're all walking each other home,
yeah.
and that's what we're doing. So, in essence, how we experience you, we are experiencing ourselves. So, like by experiencing you on this podcast, I'm experiencing my higher self.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Yes, of
So that's
course.
how it
Yeah.
is for us. Then I'm stuck in this trippy little spot where everything is an illusion because I experience everything. So I'm working on basically how to manifest what I want, say, for instance, you to answer this next question, and that's what I want you to say, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Because you literally, and I can feel your vibration inside me right now. It's just like right through my third eye almost. That I'm experiencing myself through you. And I think that's what we feel when we see your TikTok videos or wherever you're on, whatever platform you're on. We experience you through that lens of we are experiencing a higher vibrational self.
Wow, I love that.
Because
I get it though. I get it. I get it. We're all at different stages,
right,
and so I get that. Yeah, I
yeah,
do.
and it's not about yeah. There's it's funny because it's you show us the vibrational response, but you also show us that we are all connected because of
Mm,
this collective consciousness
yeah.
that it truly exists out there through your pineal gland and your brain and my pineal gland and my brain and 8 billion other people. And one of my favorite books of all time is Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah by Richard Bach. It's just a brilliant book written in 77. He did a bestseller called Jonathan Livingston Seagull before
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
And but the guy who's the former Messiah says, no, nobody's the same. They're all experiencing they all have their own different version of the universe. My
Yeah.
version is one version. Your version is so when we connect, trying to connect those two things that this is an illusion and this is what I'm seeing and this is what I'm experiencing and
Mm,
from a pinprick in my finger to my dog who wants some love right while I'm doing this podcast to connecting to a collective consciousness, talking about Ram Dass walking each other home. Those are all unique experiences to me because it's my universe. But yet you exist in it too because you're part of the collective consciousness. And I have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that there are other people in this.
I do too, Kelly, actually. It's something I don't like to really talk about, but I do. I have a very hard time wrapping my head around that concept. And there are days that I don't believe that there are real people walking around with me. But you know, I don't know.
Yeah, but like when it comes to everything, I don't know if we're supposed to know the answer to that.
No, I don't think so. And I mean, I think that it's why uh I don't think that mental health is necessarily I got to be careful with it. But I do think that, it's all part of it. It's all part of the waking up process. And I think sometimes if you're not like, it can be a lot. It can be a lot for us. And so I think it's really important to talk and to have podcasts like this. And I feel that it's really important for me to share every day because, it is really frightening. And there's very intentionally with this process, there's nobody in our personal lives that are going through it and can understand really and relate. Um, so I always like to say I catch the newbies when they fall because there's always people every day that are waking up and I do. That's what I like to be. I like to be there to catch them when they're falling, if that makes sense.
Makes a ton of sense, and I never heard it put that way, but I like that. And I've always was relating a story. I was on the TikTok live last night, and I was relating a story about uh, former team leader of mine as a coder. He's like, Kelly, and I like make sure that if you're going to work on a piece of code, make sure you leave it better off than when you found it.
Mm.
So, for instance, say a routine didn't have proper documentation and whatever, I put documentation inside the code to know exactly what this routine's for, and this is how you get there, all that stuff, right? And he's like, make sure you leave it off better. And I always thought about that when it comes to you catching people. I just like to make sure I leave people better off than I found them, always. And
I
I
love
truly,
that. And I think that's all part of, it is that there becomes a responsibility that we carry once we are awakened because I think the essence of walking each other home is to do just that, is to be that guide, that
right,
that earthling guide. Um, yeah. And each one of us does that in our own way, the way that we were born to do it, with
sure,
our own creativity, with our own art.
right,
It's really about pulling feelings out of people at the end of the day, and psychologists do it and doctors do it and teachers do it,
right.
paths do it, psychics do it. We all have a gift and a reason, and that's the ultimate goal, is to pull the feelings out.
Yeah, and the more aware we are, the easier it is for us to discern whatever happens to us in that moment, whatever
Yeah,
happens to you, right? And
yeah,
I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and like I'm, I'm learning about my uh, avoidant attachment style, and I'm like some people tend to push a button in me in that where I get a physical, visceral reaction to it. Like it feels like somebody's trying to come into my heart and take something from me, so I immediately pull back. It, it's so pulling
interesting.
feelings out. I talked to her out loud about this. That was a hard thing to do for me because it's somebody I care about. And when we pull them out, we just shine the light on them. They become less important.
I know
One of
what you
my
mean. Yeah.
one of my therapists always said, Kelly, just by naming it, whatever it is, you give it less power.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
It's so true. We try to avoid so much. And once we just do, we realize that it wasn't the act that we were afraid of. I don't know. There was,
Now,
and that's so true for everything in life, everything. Yeah. We're truly we're fearful of just about everything, just varying degrees.
Right. And that's, I try to integrate with my life the less fears I possibly can get. Just, and sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. And sometimes I have those days where I get caught up in the 3D world and all of the what everybody else is thinking. And then I go to this boat, then I slip into this thing going, why did I create that? Why did I create that reaction? Because I created that reaction that I had. You, you know,
Right. I do that with my children all the time, to the point, and I will tell you, full transparency, this is my ego week. I don't know what it is, but my son said to me last night, I don't understand why you won't let this go. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. There's no reason for me to be beating this to death, You're absolutely right. And my kids definitely throw it. They're the most accurate reflection back to me, my children. So
I love it. And
yeah.
I'm glad you see that though, because it's not easy to do as a parent. And I'll discern a lot of people in the 3D world think the ego is, bravado and I'm all this. And to me, ego was created in the beginning to protect us.
Yeah.
That's what its job is. And so sometimes I just laugh at it and go, okay, I got this. Thank you for wanting to protect me, but I'm okay. I got this. And I've done that over the years. Once I've understood this concept that that's what it really was created for, it's not about bravado. That's just a false sense of security. The ego's
Right.
there to actually to make sure you're safe, and it's kind of like having an inside mom to
Yeah.
yourself, to your consciousness, and to your identity. By the way, going back to your IT recruiting and all that stuff, my computer programming career was my identity. Then I
Yeah.
finally realized, no, that's not who you are, and now I honest to God know who I am.
I love that. I'm still figuring it out.
It's
I'm still figuring.
so hard to let go of that, but it was my
Mhm.
identity. I'm like, I don't care what people do for work. I really don't.
Yeah.
I,
And it's like for me too, I think for so long I was kind of, working for other people, and they sort of owned me, and they owned my voice and my message and the way that I could be publicly. And so that too for me has been, like, oh, this is me. I'm a brand now. I can do this for myself. I can say whatever I want to say. I can share that story if I want to share that story, So it's,
yeah.
just another level of therapy for me. It's been truly a healing journey, is sort of shedding that part of myself. But yeah, I mean, my identity was so wrapped up in my career, even before, I've shared it on my page that I
Oh yeah.
lost my job, and several years ago, and that was just yeah, that was probably what led to my awakening. Honestly, it wasn't my rock bottom. Well, I think that actually was, my rock bottom. It was. And I think we have to hit that place sometimes to sort of crack us. It's intentional.
Well, we bring it into our existence because, you know, the way I look at it, our soul chose this human meat suit for a reason,
Mm,
and we're trying. Our goal, our job is to understand that reason. And I think there's a quote around that, and it might be Ram Dass, it might be somebody else, but it's basically that's the gist of it is you're here to do something that your soul knew that was going to happen. So for me, it helps then to use the law of assumption, which basically assumes, okay, this was supposed to happen. I was supposed to have that visceral reaction to somebody getting really close to me because it brought me to greater awareness of who I was. Because I had an epiphany about an hour after that conversation. Like,
mm,
oh, wow, that's okay. Because it boils down to control.
yeah,
Everything does. Everything is a feeling, and then can you control it? Like I'm trying to control my dogs right now. One of them wants to
yeah.
go out, and but that's not my job. You know what I mean?
I 100% know what you mean. And so true. The name of your podcast is so apropos, and the The mindfulness in every single moment is only half the recipe. It's it's mindfulness and the ability to surrender every moment. You have to be have the ability to surrender in every moment to it. It is relinquishing that control. People have said to me, how do I wake myself up? And it's so hard for them to understand. The only way that I know a human being can wake themselves up, I don't think it's possible, but if you were to actually do it, it is through mindfulness in every single moment that's going to wake you up. If you were able to achieve that, if you are able to, then that is being awakened.
Yeah, it's for me, and one of my favorite things is Eckhart Tolle talks about it, and he says there's no past or there's no future. There's only the present moment, and I love that because I'm thinking about it now about me as an 8-year-old. That's not the past. That's this moment right now,
Right now. Isn't that
right
incredible?
here, right now.
But most people can't conceptualize that in their brain.
I know.
Yeah.
And I saw this. I have two things to give you. One, I had this Dr. Eddie Villamoria on my podcast, and I asked him, do we think thoughts or do we receive thoughts? And his answer, and he says, no, Kelly, we call them into being. And I've always thought about that. You would call thoughts into being. In fact, I don't know if that's right or wrong. It just fascinates me.
No, I think what I've been wrestling with a lot lately is just somebody said that it must be in a book or something, but that the Big Bang Theory
Right?
is when source recognizes I am, right? So that in
Okay.
essence, if you really drill that down, right? That
Yep.
would be like me, really like waking up, right? So are we going in reverse? Are we going backwards? Are we, I don't know. That's something I've been not going in reverse, but
Are we
I don't
going
know.
back to nothing?
Are we going back to nothing? I mean, we are. That's the whole goal, right? Going back to nothing, becoming nothing. It's wild. That's
Wow.
that's the latest trip I've been on.
That's a fun one too. And
Mm,
it's trippy for me because I used to be an atheist and a Catholic too. And what you said about Catholicism made me actually appreciate it because I was a good Catholic boy and altar boy and all that stuff. So I'm educated somewhat. I'm not perfectly educated, but but the Big Bang Theory going through that was what turned me back to the fact that there's source, there's something bigger
mm,
than us. But then it's like we're this collective consciousness, so is that source? And if we're this collective consciousness constantly evolving and cycling through humans, yeah, that's where I get lost.
I know.
But
And,
that's
and
fun
it is fun
for me.
sometimes
Well, yeah, I mean, in small doses
because
because
you're never going to figure it out.
yeah,
The mind
the
trick.
computer programmer in me, that's one of the things I love to do is I love to figure out why something's doing what it's doing. That's it was more fun for me to maintain code than create it from scratch
Mm.
because I love figuring out what it was doing. That was enjoyable for me.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think that's why I actually liked recruiting so much was because I loved the challenge of finding that unicorn, that needle in a haystack. And I always found them, always did. And that it's like the high you get from the search.
Yep. But
Yeah.
I get yeah, and I think for my second chapter of this podcast, I'm going to be more discernible on who I bring on. But I think it's fun because it's finding a little unicorn to come on there. I love fascinating stories, just like Edie Villamoria or Eddie. He's from the UK, and he looks just like you think he would look. Great, great podcast. Has this. four books that yeah. One of my weaknesses is I get self help books and I get that
Mm,
endorphin rush buying it and then I never finish it.
yeah.
None of them has ever kept my attention for that long. The Ram Dass one, yes.
Have
And
you, and you read Eckhart? I heard you say Eckhart Tolle.
what now?
Do you read Eckhart Tolle?
Yes, I have the power of now.
Yeah. That's
And
probably the best, the the most um that's one of my favorites, The Power of Now, truly.
for
That
me,
did I think the
yeah,
most change on me.
yeah, it just hearing him talk is
Hmm.
incredible because he was homeless for 2 years in London
Yeah.
before he was anybody.
Yeah.
And I like him, and I also love the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz,
Yeah.
which I sometimes in my journaling routine, I just write those four down before I go to work. So I don't take things personally. I don't make assumptions. I do my best, and I'm impeccable with my word every day. That's hard to do.
It's extremely hard to do. And you don't think you're like, oh, those four. Yeah. It's extremely hard to do. It is. But yeah, that's probably the Four Agreements is probably the book I gift the most and recommend the most.
I have Four Agreements hard
And
deck.
the mastery of love is really, really good too.
Oh, yeah, that one's supposed to be good. I haven't read. I have a hardest time trying to go through some of those. But there's one book that is fascinating me, and it's a big deal. It's called Positive Magic, and it talks about how magic has already existed throughout all time.
Hmm.
And it was written the one I have is 2002. I don't know when I got it. Um, and it was fascinating to me because there's updated versions of it from 2006 or whatever. So, and it actually, I don't know, it gives you a little history lesson, which I like because I love history, but it's also practical. It's like, because we are in the age of Aquarius right now.
Hmm.
We're right in and knee deep into it. That's why you have this cosmic shift. That's why all these things that we see in our 3D world are happening. It's because it's falling apart, and it's like that Japanese art where if a vase breaks, they use gold to put it back together so it's worth
Hmm.
more. That's kind of what we're doing right now.
Mm.
Things are breaking apart, but we're going to glue it back together with something even more amazing.
It's
And
falling apart so it can, yes, so we can put it back together stronger.
yep, yeah, that'll mean sometimes things have to fall apart for something better to come into
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I love that.
It's difficult, and I knew you would be a wonderful podcast, but it's so I don't know. Today feels just like a conversation, not like and because I make my podcast where I just talk to people.
Mm.
Like it's
Yeah.
like we were having a cup of coffee somewhere and and there just happens to be recorded and whatever.
Yeah.
Big deal. I don't care about that. It's you have that ability about you and very aligned chakras.
Yeah. No, I knew we'd have great energy and chemistry. I'm so glad you invited me to do this, and I'm happy to come back anytime. It was a blast.
It's been a huge blast, and I know once we hang up, I'll go, oh, I should have asked that or whatever. But maybe we'll just continue it on a live on TikTok
I
or
was gonna
something.
say we should connect on a live some night. That would be fun.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, I definitely would love that just to listen to you and get some people in there. And
Yeah.
sometimes I do lives, and my friend Josh, who's a medium, he'll actually do readings for my people that come in. Literally,
I'd love to ask you some questions. I noticed that you were
ask
into the
me.
Akashic.
Yes, ask
How
away. I'm here. Oh,
do
you
you
want to do that on live? Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah, I would. I would love to interview you on the Akashic. I get asked about the Akashic a lot and I don't dabble in it anymore. I don't really want to touch it at all, but I'm very fascinated with those that do. And so yeah, maybe we'll flip the script and I'll interview you next time on the Akashic.
It's fine, whatever. I'm in.
I would love it.
Absolutely in. And I, honest to goodness, you have anything else you want to talk about, or do you feel like, Kelly, this was great?
I
You
honestly, I think it was I think it was great. I loved it. I think we had great energy. I think the conversation flowed, like you said. And yeah, I think it was fantastic. I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, let's do this again. But I also would love to be on your live just to,
Yeah,
yeah, you don't do that anymore, the Akashic stuff. But I literally got this deck as a gift. And apparently and it's an Akashic Tarot deck. It's not reading the records, it's a tarot deck. So, which is kind of different.
yeah.
So it would be fun to
That
talk
would
to
be
you about
fun.
that.
Yeah, I
It's
think we
different
should.
and it's fun. And apparently I'm good at it. I, who knew?
I would love it. I think that would be fun.
Excellent. I really appreciate your time today, Jennifer. You have been wonderful. I knew you would be. And I was stoked.
Oh,
I was kind of nervous, but I loved the fact that I got just a little bit of nervousness because
yeah,
that
no.
means it's
I'm
important
so
to me.
yeah, well, thank you so so much. I'm so appreciative to be asked.
Well, I'm grateful. And let's set up something for a TikTok live as well. I would love you to interview me and just
I would love it. For
perfect.
sure. For sure. Yeah, definitely. I've got some fun projects coming down the pike with book talk and lots of cool stuff coming. So yeah, we'll be going live a lot more.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for your time today. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
You as well. Take care.
All right. Bye.